President of the United States Army, and a grateful nation. Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar. Binot asher yarbitzeni amem menuchot yanachaleni. Nafshi shovev, yanacheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki helech begetz al mavet, lo hirara. Ki atai madi, shiftecha umishantacha, hema yenachamoni. Ta'aroch l'nai shulchan, neged tzorirai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, Kosiri vaya, ach tov chesed yirdifuni, koyam echayai, vishaveti, beveit Adonai, leorech yamim. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. As we search for comfort and strength through these difficult times, we often turn to the psalmist. And so I ask you to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. So long as he lives, we too will live, for he is now a part of us, as we remember Sidney Harry Siegel. To his children, Stacy and Trudy, also to Ricky and Jerry, to his grandchildren, Carly, Robin, and Ethan, and also to Jeff, and to his great-grandchildren, to Adeline and Everly and London and Josiah, to his dear friend, his girlfriend Phyllis, and to family members and dear friends who have joined us today. We've come together today to remember, but also to celebrate the beautiful life of your beloved Harry. We have been taught that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, and from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding and fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Harry Siegel's journey, a lifespan of over 98 years, began right here in Cleveland. He was born in 1919 to his Lithuanian immigrant parents, Sam and Tilly Siegel. Harry was one of 5 children, and together with his siblings, Julius and Sylvia, Doris and Sam, all of blessed memory, this very large family found their way and managed to overcome the challenges of the Depression years and perhaps some of the most difficult years in our nation's history. Harry's mother tended to the home and taking care of the children, while his father worked 6 days a week, peddling pots and pans and expanding eventually to selling irons off of his cart, and then doing tailoring work, and eventually selling clothing. And this led him to establishing a pawn shop, and then Sam's Post on 34th and Woodland. The Siegel family was a family who treasured their Judaism. They were an Orthodox family who kept kosher and where Yiddish was spoken. Times, though, were always tough, and Harry would one day tell his own children about a time in his life when he was not able to go to the movies with his classmates because it cost a nickel, something he did not have. So when we say at the time he did not have 2 nickels to rub together, this saying is so true. Harry's teen years were fairly simple. He attended school. He was a very good student, actually, who excelled at math. And then every day after school, he could be found working side by side with his father at the store. Occasionally, Harry might find time to get a game of stickball in with his buddies, but this was a very hard-working young man. Following his graduation from John Hay High School, Harry went to work full-time in the family business, and just 2 days after D-Day, he was drafted into the United States Army, where he served as a technical sergeant specializing in Morse code. He was stationed in France and many other places. Escaping death many, many times, Harry bravely served our country until the conclusion of World War II. And at just 26 years of age, he returned home to Cleveland and resumed working with his father. Now, Jean Bogorad would retell the story later in her years to her very own daughters. She would tell the story about a night that she was out on a date, and there were maybe another 2 couples with her and her beau. And as they were out to dinner, she noticed that one of the other gentlemen, Harry Siegel, kept looking at her. And as Jean would say to her daughters, he stared at me all night. While it appeared that Harry was smitten with the young Jean, she would tell you that she was not at all interested in him. But following that evening, somehow, Harry found the nerve to persist, and a courtship ensued. Love blossomed, and the 2 of them were married in Cleveland on May 3rd, 1953, at the Temple on the Heights. Throughout their marriage, Harry and Jean shared their many loves, their love of dancing, their love of spending wonderful times with so many dear friends, their love of the arts and attending productions at the Hannah Theater, their love of travel and visiting so many exotic places on cruises and otherwise, to Spain and the Baltics, to Israel and to Norway. And with all their shared interests and passions, nothing brought Jean and Harry more joy, more nachas, than their family. When Stacy and Trudy entered into this world, well, I think you 2 sisters know that the Siegel family portrait must have became much more complete for your parents. Trudy, in remembering your father, you described him as a man who was strong-willed, who had a keen mind. You said he was a lifelong learner, and a great lover of Judaism. And Stacy, you described a man who was compassionate and kind and caring and helpful. And it seems that he was so helpful that when you were, we'll say, suffering from being very homesick, you would come home every weekend your freshman year at Miami University. Your dad was so helpful that one might find him doing all of your freshman papers. But we won't tell your professors that at this point. Stacy and Trudy, you remember that prior to his retirement, your father survived a triple bypass surgery. And following that ordeal, he dedicated himself to staying as fit and as healthy as possible. He made healthy eating changes, and he walked every day, and he golfed regularly. And even at 98 years old, your dad could still be found on the deck of his home in Florida doing his arm exercises. The two of you described your dad as a man who never complained. You saw your father as a hard-working man, usually working 6 days a week, just like his father. And he was a man who could enjoy himself, relaxing at the racetrack with his brother Julius, or just enjoying anything that had to do with his Cleveland sports teams. You mentioned to me that on the last day that he was even able to speak. One of the few things he was able to ask you was what was the score of the Indians game that day. You saw a father who was the most loving and dedicated husband. You saw a mom and dad through good times and years of health, and you saw parents together through the more difficult times in life and times of illness. You saw the love and the bond that your parents always shared. And your mom's passing in 1999 left a tremendous void for your dad and for the entire family. But we are taught and we come to learn that love is stronger than death. And the love of his family gave your dad the strength to persevere. His sons-in-law understood and appreciated the gift, the blessing of having Harry Siegel as their father-in-law. Jerry, you knew a man who was intelligent. You described him as a bright man and that he had the sharpest mind. And Ricky, for you, Harry was not just a father-in-law, but as you stated in a little note that you wrote for me to share, you said, "What I learned about the clothing business came from Harry, buying and selling. He was a true old-world salesman, always got the best out of people, and Harry loved to deal. He coined the phrase, 'Let's make a deal.'" You said that Harry was a great father to his daughters, and you closed by telling me, Ricky, that he made you feel like you were always part of the family. When speaking of Harry's family, the most precious gems, his greatest treasures had to have been his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. Carly, Ethan, and Robin, the pride and the love your grandfather felt for the three of you, as you know, is without measure. When Harry was 80 years old, he met a lovely young woman in Florida, Phyllis, and the two of them were dear companions for nearly 14 years. Harry and Phyllis traveled together, and it seems that she helped to keep Harry young at heart. He remained involved in his pursuit of learning. He loved to read, an avid reader, not only novels, but he read the Wall Street Journal daily, every single day, every single page. And he took classes at the Jewish College in Florida. He was also a social member at Boca Lago, where he'd play poker and win regularly. And he played just 3 weeks ago. He so enjoyed the time spent in his garden, tending to his flowers and his tomatoes. He was a sweet and good man who lived a wonderful and full life. And in the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Emerson writes what his views are, what it means to be a success. He says, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden path, or a redeemed social condition. To know that even one life has breathed easier because you lived. This is to have succeeded." And I think we all know that Harry truly succeeded. Our tradition has taught us that words which come from the heart always enter directly to the heart. There's a few members of the family who have words in their heart they want to share with us today. First, I'd like to call on his daughter, Trudy.
Dear Dad, I'm writing to you today as you often did to me when it was difficult to express your heartfelt feelings. It's so hard to imagine that I even have to write this letter. You're a man of strength, so strong that we all felt you would live forever. Your strong will emanated in so many ways. What always comes to mind is how, as a World War II sergeant, you escaped death, fear, and loneliness, only to relive those days through countless stories told to us with pride, passion, and a smile. Though I often pretended to be bored while you recounted your tales, and a lot of them, I secretly admired how you were always able to adapt and survive whatever danger was thrown your way. Your strength persevered as you fought through numerous medical issues as well. You barely complained as you recovered through 2 broken hips, 2 toe surgeries, broken backbones, infections, and these were in your late 80s and 90s. I can barely get out of bed when I have a cold. But Dad, you mostly passed your strength on to me through subtle actions. One of my most vivid memories of you holding me up is on my wedding day. My heart pounding as I was about to walk down that aisle, not afraid to be married, but afraid to leave you and Mom. You took my hand firmly in yours and you said, "Okay, let's go." I can still hear your words and feel you leading me down the road to the rest of my life. Strength, however, can sometimes be a double-edged sword. Those of us who appear to be strong are often mistaken to be unfeeling or even demanding. Our actions to protect others can overshadow our desire to push ourselves and others forward. Unfortunately, it took me until your recent illness to really be able to see this. I'd constantly get frustrated with you for refusing more help for your daily routines. While I considered this stubbornness at the time, I look back now and see it was your desire and will to stay independent and not burden anyone with your problems. During these past few weeks, I too tried to put on a strong face, mostly for you, but also for family and friends. Dad, I know it's not as easy as it seems. And although we need to support, sometimes we can be ignored because we appear to have it all together. Dad, I truly admire you to have been able to hold it together for 98 years. Another thing I will always admire is your, let's say, organizational skills. Most would call it OCD, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I mean, who else has their whole funeral planned, directed, and paid for years in advance? Not only that, but who else would leave a book of detailed instructions just to make sure we all knew what to do with everything, from your newspaper subscription to your car insurance, once you were gone? What I will miss most, though, Dad, is our weekly 1-hour phone calls, always on Sunday and always around noon. These started 40 years ago with both you and Mommy when I went to college. You asked about school and work, and Mom took over the social activity questions. I always thought you tuned that part out of the conversation, but to my surprise, right after her death, you were able to take right over for her in that department. In fact, in recent years, you asked about my family first, and at the very end, you would say, "How's work?" I never really liked each Sunday call to end, and I really don't want your life to have ended. I'm glad you don't have to hold it together for us anymore, and any pain you had is now gone. I will still talk to you in my heart, not only on Sundays, but every day. I'll keep an eye on the Cleveland Indians, Cavs, and Miami Heat scores for you, too. I will do my best to continue your legacy of strength and perseverance, and I'll try not to be as obsessive about organization. I'll love you forever, Dad. Rest in peace with Mommy and all your family.
I also want to call on his grandchildren, Carly, Robin, and Ethan. We're going to see if Robin might be able to join us. I know she's got some beautiful children out there she's tending to, but we'll just invite her to come in. Did you want to go first? Sure. Will you introduce that?
Start by reading a note written by Stacy. My daddy was the best daddy in the whole wide world. He was a dad of unconditional love. I called him every day at 6 o'clock. Never once did he ever complain about himself, his terrible back pain, or his aching feet. And in the past year, I know how difficult daily activities became for him, but he never complained. Our talks were always about me. He always asked how my stomach was, or did I have heartburn, or how the kids were at school. He worried more about me than I worried about him, if that is possible. My dad was my rock. He always made me feel better and said that things will always work out. My dream for the past 3 years was to move to Florida and get a house with my dad. I didn't want him to be alone and wanted him to feel safe and cared for. My daddy made that dream come true. He was so excited about our new house and how he was going to buy a bedroom set and decorate the rooms and garage. I can't believe my daddy won't be here to live out my dream. Daddy, I miss you more than you will ever know. You were such a trooper. I'm sorry that you had to go through all that suffering. But at 6 o'clock every day, I will call your number and we will talk about the day. And I will remind you how much I love you. Thank you for all the fantastic things you have done for me. Rest in peace, Daddy.
Okay. Papi was so proud of me and loved me and my kids with all his heart. He was unconditional with his love and always supported us when we needed help. He was so sharp, always remembering things about my schooling and asking about my job every time we spoke. Mimi and Papi and I grew very close when I was young. I used to walk to their house across the oval every day after school. One of my fondest memories was visiting his tomato garden and filling my hands with as many tomatoes as I could carry. Okay, I have a joke coming up. Let me get myself together here. Papi has never had the best hearing. One time when I was sick, I asked him to bring me Kleenex, and he brought me peanuts. He never lived that one down. Mimi and Papi were snowbirds, so I got to visit them in Boca every winter and spring break. Papi taught me how to swim. He had the most beautiful stroke. Papi had his quirks too, and man was he set in his ways. We always had to be ready for dinner, promptly by 6:01, not a minute later. But he always took us to the nicest restaurants. He had such a love for good food, even if he ordered everything very well done and smothered in ketchup. But that restaurant better have bread, a whole basket just for Papi, or we wouldn't be returning. 8 years ago, last Wednesday, we were dancing at my wedding. You were looking dapper as always and making everyone laugh. Now you've gone to join Mimi in heaven. I will miss you dearly. I have loved each and every moment we shared, even when you were embarrassing me at a restaurant. I promise to always honor your memory and make sure there's bread. I love you.
Today we're here to honor and celebrate the life of Harry Siegel, the only grandfather that I've really ever known. As you've heard, he was a beloved family member to many, and it would be impossible to highlight all the people that he impacted in the nearly a century he spent with us. For me, many of the memories that I have of him are from when I was younger. And from the perspective of a child, what stood out to me were his principles, and he had a few. He liked his house clean and his food well done. He kept such a tight ship that he would use his dustbuster on everything. As kids, he would use it even while we were still eating to pick up crumbs, and occasionally our toes would get stuck in it. He would even use it on ants that would come through the house. He knew the way he liked things, and they would stay that way. But as I grew older, I grew to learn the nuances that made him the person that he was. More than anything, he was a man who cared. He was a man who would fly anywhere in the country, even when it became difficult for him, to be with the people who he cared about, to celebrate or to mourn with family when they needed it most. He was sharp, and he always remembered the details of everything, but more importantly, of everyone. You knew how much he cared and how much he'd listened when you remember the smallest detail of a conversation you'd had a long time prior. For me, even just a few months ago, he remembered the names of my friends and the important people in my life. In what would end up being our last conversation, he even remembered my ex-girlfriend by name. But perhaps what is most important is the impact he had on the people around him. I know how often he would talk with his children. He'd spend hours on the phone just listening and really listening. I know how meaningful this was, as my mom now does this with me every night when I leave work. And I hope to do this with my own kids someday. It's gestures like this that are the most profound and will never be forgotten, and shows that he left the world in a better place than when he entered it. Thank you.
As you're able, I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, shochen במרומים, עמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת שלום הרש בן שבסה וטובה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תחי מנוחתו. הנ"ל ברחמים אסתירהו, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום, על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, to our dear departed Sidney Harry Siegel, who has gone now to his eternal home. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of life eternal, and grant that Harry's memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. Amen. Friends, our service will continue at the Mount Olive Cemetery, and following the interment, the family will receive visitors today until 8 p.m., and also Monday and Tuesday from 2 until 4, and then again from 6 until 8. It will be at the Hertz residence at 371 Roseberry Court in Mayfield Heights. Anyone wishing to make a contribution in memory of Harry, the family has suggested that you might consider the National World War II Museum. On behalf of the family, we thank you for your love and support today.